Well, I guess before we get started, I'll just introduce myself. I'm general manager at Bear Arms. Better stand over here. If you're not familiar with Bear Arms, we're in Ashland, Kentucky, getting ready to open one in Huntington, West Virginia. We're a gun store, training facility, so we do training such as this. We do everything from basic handgun training up to as far as you'd want to go. But I'm not here to push firearms. I'm here to kind of talk about, the main topic is active shooter response. What to do if you're in a building, in a mall, with your family, anywhere that obviously active shooters are getting more and more prevalent. The number of incidents is going up, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So a little bit about my background. I just retired in October 2016 from the Ashland Police Department, spent 21 years as a cop. During that 21 years, a big part of my job was serving on the tactical team. So I did pretty much every job on there. When I retired as the team commander, let's see, 1998 to 2001, I was the second school resource officer in the state of Kentucky. So that's kind of what got me into a combination of that, Columbine happening, and my tactical experience. Did a lot of training and actually trained police officers how to respond to active shooters. And I guess fast forward through all the years, things changed, and now I kind of teach you guys what to do if an active shooter incident happens. The big part of what I do is the training, manage the training. So we're going to talk about active shooter scenario type stuff, what to do if an active shooter comes into the building, or like I said, it can happen anywhere. Definition of an active shooter. The term is active shooter, but if you watch the news, they use anything. The big thing now is running people over with cars. You see a lot overseas using knives, hatchets, not just guns. So the term we use is active shooter, but keep in mind they can use anything. And I'm not going to go deep down into statistics, but obviously the number of incidents is going up. It goes up every year. So you can see this is up to 2015. Incidents are on the rise. And it's not a new concept. You go back to 1764, Indian warriors entered a schoolhouse and killed the schoolmaster, 9 students. 1966, University of Texas. That's just kind of a little bit history of incidents. Bath Township, Michigan, 1927, they used dynamite, guns, injured 58, 45 deaths. So Columbine, I talked about when I was school resource officer, that's when the Columbine incident happened. So Columbine, I think everybody here is old enough to remember when that happened. Columbine really changed things, changed the way police respond was the big thing. This last incident that happened in Florida, the old police response was the police show up, surround wherever the bad guy is, shooting up the place, and wait for tactical teams to respond. Well, Columbine really changed a lot of that stuff. Now we've learned, or I say we, as police officers learned, they can't just show up to a building, sit outside while someone's in killing people. So they have to have an immediate response. So up until Columbine, that was the biggest mass shooting event, and then Virginia Tech happened, and there's been several other bigger ones since Virginia Tech. So they're getting bigger and bigger. Sandy Hook Elementary, that's a fairly recent one. He was Bushmaster, XM15. He had several different guns, but they had 28 deaths, 2 injuries. So one of the quotes from a mother of a Sandy Hook victim: "We can't control situations which come to us in life. We can only choose how to respond to them." So that's why we're here today, to kind of give you guys an idea of what you need to be doing if something happens. Mentality of an active shooter. It's kind of changing, but their desire is to make a big show, to get a big body count. They're going after a populated area. Unfortunately, and I don't know what your guys' weapons policy is here for your employees, but they do hit soft targets. That's their target of choice, someplace where they're not going to run into somebody with a gun. Soft targets, sometimes they'll have an intended, a lot of these stem from domestic situations. Someone gets mad at their husband or wife and wants to go do them harm. So they may come into the building and they're going to take out any target on their way to getting that person. Like I said, they want to make a big show, they want a big body count. And what they're seeing here in the last few years is the newer active killers are trying to outdo the ones previous to them. So they're really trying to get the big body counts. So a thing people don't realize is these guys go in, their mental capacities, they generally don't have an escape plan. They want to go in, cause damage, and they're either planning on committing suicide or getting killed by the police. They're not, I guess, mentally ready. Like it says here, the mentality, even when civilians, you guys, unarmed civilians, resist, the active shooter will crumble. They're not expecting you guys to fight back, and we'll kind of talk about fighting back here in a little bit, but it's something that they don't expect, and it just throws them out of kilter. Like I said, they crumble. So there's a famous psychologist, Army psychologist, Colonel Dave Grossman, that kind of came up with this concept a while back, using a sheep, as in you guys, just normal people that walk around every day doing what they do, eating grass, don't want to hurt anybody, just doing your thing. And like I said, he uses the sheep to portray that. The protector, the sheepdog, is the protectors, the police, the military. You guys, if you decide you want to stand up to the wolf on the left, whether you realize it or not, 26 years of law enforcement experience, there are people out there that don't care to hurt you, kill you, steal from you, and your family. It's unfortunate, but it's just, that's something that you do have to realize and accept. It's not a perfect world out there, trust me. While there's nothing morally superior about being the sheepdog, your chance of, if you get in the right mindset of fighting back, or what we're going to talk about, situational awareness, being aware of what's going on around you, your chance of survivability in a bad situation goes way up. It says normally what destroys 98% of the population, the sheepdog is able to survive in. That's from Colonel Dave Grossman. So we're going to talk about situational awareness. So situational awareness, not just in a building, but the big thing that we try to get out to you is just be aware of what's going on around you. Has anybody seen Jason Bourne, the series? So you see where everywhere he walks, he's aware of everything, sees everything, hears everything, knows what's going around. I don't want to put out that you should be paranoid, because that's not a good thing. There's different conditions, and we really want you to be in condition yellow. Condition yellow, you're just normal, but before you get out, look around. See if there's anything out of the ordinary. Or someone comes in, just be aware of what they're doing, just keep an eye on them. You have to kind of establish a baseline. I think pretty much everybody knows everybody in here for the most part. So you can kind of establish a baseline of what's normal in here. Or when you go to houses, what's normal when you go to a house. So look for the abnormal things, but really look, listen. If something doesn't look right, all you have to do is pull right back out and figure out what's going on, or maybe call another worker to go in there with you if it doesn't feel right. So establish a baseline wherever you go. And there's some places that you're going to go, I probably shouldn't do this, but a lot of central parks. You know, you got a wide variety of people in there, homeless people, people just out jogging, exercising, families playing. So just depending on where you go is where you have to establish that baseline. Put yourself in a position for optimal observation. Like I said, 26 years of law enforcement experience. If I go into a restaurant, I cannot sit with my back to the door. It drives me crazy. My family knows that. So when we go in, they know to sit where I can see what's going on. If not, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Maybe a little bit paranoid, but just put yourself in a place where you can see what's going on. So we're affected by the normalcy bias. So when dangerous or unexpected events occur, you'll expect that your natural response would be to spring into action and either fight or flee. Has anybody ever heard of the fight or flight response? What we found, if you remember the Texas church shooting not too long ago, is anybody familiar with that one? What did they do? Well, a guy came in shooting What the majority of the people in the congregation do? Hid behind the pews. So that doesn't really do anything. You're just a sitting target. But that's just the response that they had. And we'll kind of talk, I may be jumping a little bit ahead here, but we'll talk about the herd mentality. One person sees something happens in this room, they may look at one person who ducks down and it just seems normal. They're like a flock of sheep. They all do the same thing, just duck down, which is what happened in that church. So everybody just ducked down behind the pews and he just walked through and kept shooting them. Freezing up's a big thing. You have to do something. Don't just duck down behind a pew and freeze up. We'll kind of get into the actions that you should take, but just keep in mind you do have to do something if you want to survive. The bystander effect is kind of, like I said, your inclination to take action when we see a threat or a need diminishes when you're part of a group. Nobody wants to stand out. Maybe they're afraid they're going to look stupid in front of everybody, so instead of doing the right thing, they'll do nothing. Overconfidence, I see this a lot, especially, you can imagine working at a gun range with a bunch of veterans and ex-police. You see a lot of overconfidence. It's easy to sit back and say, yeah, if someone came in this room right now, I'd take care of business, I got a gun. It's a really easy concept to say, and you've probably heard people doing that. The big thing that we push is training. So you honestly have to train yourself. They found in wars, Vietnam War, I'll talk about the Vietnam War, they shoot thousands and thousands, hundreds, thousands of rounds and don't hit anything. That's because human brains aren't, unless there's a few circumstances, but the human brain's not designed to hurt other humans. You're not psychologically programmed to hurt other humans or kill other humans. Like I said, there's some psychosis, some mental disorders that make that not 100% true, but generally we don't like to hurt other people. So you really do have to train your brain. What they found in the Vietnam War is they just started using, in practice, they would use human targets or humanoid shaped targets to kind of train them that, yeah, when you're in war, you need to take out the enemy. So we talked a little bit about the tendency to conform. It's in our nature to want to be part of a group. Being hardwired to retain our membership in a group was essential for our ancestors in survival. There's safety in numbers. And we talked a little bit about this already, but we operate from a herd mentality. Just like a flock of sheep, if one sheep takes off running, generally the whole flock takes off running that way. Okay, this is a big one. We depend on authority figures to make decisions. If something bad happened right now, who are we going to look to in this room to take action? Who's everybody going to look to? Speaker, yeah, wow. All right, so with that in mind, it doesn't have to be the general manager, the guy with a lot of gun training, the owner of the company. Someone has to take charge, and that's who the person that you want to look to is. It could be the newest guy in the room here. If that guy steps up and says, hey, we need to do this, if he's doing something, that's who you want to, as long as it's not like, hey, everybody hide underneath this desk right here while there's a guy in here shooting. But look to somebody. All right, so we don't know how to handle stress. There's a lot of physiological and psychological things that happen to a person's body when they get that adrenaline dump. So this is something that you have to be aware of. Your fine motor skills diminish. But the big thing I try to put out with fine motor skills, they diminish. The reason they do, when you get that adrenaline dump, your body pushes all that blood to your major muscles so that you get stronger. But as a result, your fine motor skills diminish. And a lot of places will talk about communication. If someone comes in that front door, how are you going to let the people in the back of the building know what's going on? But if you can imagine someone busting through that door right now and popping a couple shots out, try to pull your phone out, unlock it, and dial a number, it's not going to happen. So you got to keep it simple. Intercom system, a buzzer, some type of lights. A lot of people don't think about that kind of stuff. So your fine motor skills diminish, you get tunnel vision, as in, generally you got good peripheral vision. I can see out to here. When stress hits you, if the stress is coming from back here, my vision's going to be zoned in on him. I'm not going to be aware of what's going on to the right and to the left of me. The way police officers trained, if you ever watch them train, whenever they shoot, they'll fire a couple rounds and they always look left, right. One, they're checking for other adversaries, but two, they're breaking that tunnel vision. Just because it's a natural thing that happens. You'll get totally zoned in on one thing and something could be going on over here and you'd not even see it. Auditory exclusion, your hearing. There's been people involved in shootings that, or either shot a gun or got shot at, and we'll ask them, how many shots did you hear? And I say, I didn't hear any shots, but there were shots fired. But that's just the way your body, an effect of the adrenaline dump. So your ability to manipulate complex problems deteriorates. This is just stuff that you need to be aware of that could possibly happen to you. One that I don't have on here, and you guys probably might be able to relate to it, but voiding your bladder, pee in your pants, it happens. So it's just something that you have to be aware of, just the way adrenaline affects your body. Stay in shape. A lot of us aren't in shape. When I retired, I actually gained a bunch of weight, so working on my way back down, but be in shape. So we got a small video here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it with these lights on, but this is actually put out by Homeland Security. And then we'll talk a little bit about it, but it's your basic concept in an active shooter situation.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights And if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right, so it's a pretty simple concept. Run, hide, fight. Run, if you can get away. Don't try to be a hero against somebody with a gun. Everybody's heard the term, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So if you can run, if you can get away, get away. Take care of yourself. If you can't, if for some reason you go out and maybe the shooter's out there, you want to hide. What do we say that the mentality of an active shooter, what do they want? Big body count. So if you can barricade yourself in a room, if you can shut the lights off, most of your doors, I don't know if they got windows in them or not, but barricade the doors, hide in this corner so when he comes by, if he looks in and doesn't see bodies, chances are he's going to keep going. So second is hide. Fight. Now this is the big one, and it's a kind of a hard concept to grasp, but you have to truly mentally prepare yourself to do unthinkable damage to another human being. You know, if you can pick up, I think they used a fire extinguisher in there, you got one right there. As a last resort, if you have to fight, you have to give it everything that you have and be prepared to, I don't know, if you haven't experienced violence, if you haven't been in a fight, if you haven't seen something violent happening, if you've never experienced it, it's something that you truly have to think about. You have to be able to pick that fire extinguisher up and not give somebody a love tap on the head. You have to swing with everything that you have because you're trying to protect yourself. You're going up against somebody with a gun or a hatchet or a knife. There's power in numbers, so work together. But as a last resort, you have to fight. You truly have to, I don't know how to emphasize it enough, but if you've never been in a violent situation, as we said, humans aren't programmed to hurt other humans, but it's something that you have to do. It's something that you really have to think about and mentally prepare yourself for. The OODA Loop, it's for observe, orient, decide, and act. We talked about the active shooters crumbling even against unarmed civilians when you guys resist. The OODA Loop is a concept that it kind of throws them for a loop. If a bad guy comes through that door with a gun not expecting resistance from you guys, he's got to take the time to observe, orient himself, decide what to do, and then act upon that. That is going to hopefully give you guys enough time to do what you have to do to protect yourself if you have to fight. Because believe it or not, that's going to take, those 4 steps right there are going to take some time. So that's the time that you guys have to do what you need to do. Do not pursue or hunt the aggressor. There's been a lot of, even if you're armed, there's been a lot of these incidents here lately where they're using rifles, and it's something that they've used in the past as rifles. You've heard the term, don't take a knife to a gunfight. One of my terms is don't take a pistol to a rifle fight, because your chances of winning went way down. Way down. So law enforcement objective, they kind of talked about a little bit in the video, but if something like this happens, you might not be prepared. You could be in the middle of this room laying on the ground bleeding with a gunshot wound, and when the police come in, they may step right over top of you. But their primary goal when they get there is to take out the act of aggression. That's #1 priority to them. Once that's done, they'll start doing the medical needs, form medical teams, and start patching you up. And so just kind of be prepared for that. Remember, we talked about the mentality. They generally don't have an escape plan. They're planning on either killing themselves or being killed by the police. So this is kind of no-brainer stuff, but when the police do come in, don't point at them or the shooter. Don't make any quick movements. Don't run towards them. Attempt to hug them. Don't scream or yell. Try to do all that stuff. It's going to be hard not to scream or yell, but just try to remain calm and don't do anything that's going to attract attention to you. And obviously, if a police officer goes into a situation like that, he's going to be under a lot of stress. We talked about the adrenaline. He's going to be experiencing that adrenaline as well. So try to remain as calm as you can. Do as the police instruct you. Keep your hands in the air. Don't do any sudden movements. If you are armed, either drop the gun on the ground or place it on a table and get your hands away from it. Properly surrender it. Don't argue with the police. You know, like I said, they may be doing stuff that you don't necessarily agree with. If there's people there bleeding, you may want them to help them, but they have other objectives initially. So try not to argue with them, and do as the police want you to do. A no-brainer. You don't want to surrender your gun like that. Hands up in a non-threatening manner. Place it on a table. I'd drop it on the ground. A lot of information, but what it boils down to is who's responsible for your guys' safety? Each of you are. You're responsible for your own safety. And keep that positive mental attitude that you will survive if something like this happens. I don't use the word I might survive or I could survive. To mentally prepare yourself, you have to tell yourself that you will survive. And I think that's it.